Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Devil's Advocate podcast. I'm your host, Keane. We have a packed panel here this evening for Manchester United versus Arsenal preview, live at the Emirates Stadium on Sunday. To the right of me, I have Jay Motti from the Stretford Paddock. Right below me, I have Tyreek, and we will have Brian back in a few seconds. He's dropped out there. But we're here today, obviously, to talk Manchester United versus Arsenal. We have Arsenal fans and we have Man United fans in the panel. So we're going to chat about obviously both clubs' midfield, I suppose the reshape of our midfield, how that's going and how it could go for this season. And we'll also talk about obviously the pending debut of Rasmus Højlund and Man United finally having a number 9 and potentially how Arsenal may combat that on Sunday. And then also with kind of towards the end, we're going to talk about all of our kind of transfers and deadline day signings, etc. So do smash the like video, do subscribe as always. Look, we do appreciate your support. But Jay, I'll firstly come to you. Because we were talking at the end of last season about United need to make signings. United need to shape the midfield. We're kind of struggling in kind of the bigger the bigger games last season in midfield. Sign Mason Mount. We've seen kind of in the first couple of games, there's I suppose we're kind of struggling with the balance in midfield. Obviously Amrabat looks like he's pending to come in as well, pending on the last minute fax machine disasters. So what do you make, obviously, first of all, of Mason Mount coming in and the midfield reshape, and then kind of our struggles in the last couple of games?
Well, when we were linked with Mason Mount, I wasn't that keen. I thought it was okay. He wasn't like a player I was like, oh, you know what, he really excites me, or he's a player that I particularly wanted. But if the manager wants him and he was available and we could get him, there's a reason for that. And also the fact that the Chelsea fans were kicking off about it quite a lot. Sort of, I know he came through the academy, so part of it was that. But a lot of Chelsea fans I saw and I spoke to rated him. They rated him very highly. And you look at the difference between how they reacted to that and the Kai Havertz transfer. I think they were glad to see the back of Kai Havertz because he hadn't really done much other than that goal in the Champions League final. But when they saw that Mason Mount was leaving, they were gutted. So I thought, okay, there's a player there. Pre-season, he didn't really do anything, very little. I don't think you can take too much from pre-season. To be honest with you, I remember pre-season under Louis van Gaal, I thought we were going to win the league. And, the season starts, we lose the first game against Swansea. And, the wheels almost come off straight away. So can't look too much into pre-season. Then he gets his injury. So he's been a bit unlucky there. But, he's 24. He knows the Premier League. His numbers are decent. He's obviously been asked to play a little bit of a different role for Manchester United than he was at Chelsea. That's probably going to take him a little while to adapt. But it'll be interesting to see now we've got Sofian Amrabat coming in, how that changes things. Is that going to be someone who's going to come in when Casemiro needs a rest, or is he going to play alongside Casemiro and have Mason Mount drop out? I'm not really sure. So it'll be interesting to see what Erik ten Hag does when Sofian Amrabat comes in, because obviously he's more of a defensive type of player, where Mason Mount, despite the fact we played him as a deep player, I still think of him more of an attacking type of midfielder, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he's definitely more of kind of a number 8 or kind of a number 10, kind of more of advanced up the pitch. It'd be interesting to see how he kind of adapts, because obviously if Ten Hag wants to play kind of a 4-3-3 and he kind of wants to play Bruno in there, do one of him or Bruno make that allowance to drop that bit deeper, or do they take turns? But like you said as well, Amrabat coming in, I think, throws a spanner into the works in terms of what maybe does Ten Hag alter the way he plays in certain games, like we're talking about away from home last season against the top 9. We really did struggle, especially. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens with that. Brian, I'm going to come to you on the midfield, kind of on Mount and Bruno. Obviously that kind of dynamic we've seen against Spurs, especially in that second half, though it didn't work and we were carved open to quite a bit on the break. Do you think, like in the bigger games, that we might see maybe Amrabat, like Casemiro, like Jay said, and maybe we've seen Ten Hag push Bruno out wide quite a lot, and I personally don't agree with it though at the best of times, because I think he's our most creative player, and he's so good in the middle of the park. Like, where do you think we find this balance? Do you think Erik ten Hag kind of has a big job in his hands in terms of reshaping this midfield?
Yeah, I'm still not quite convinced about the Mason Mount signing, because it has been exposed already. I know it's on the early days, but it's shown a weakness in Casemiro as he ages a bit. Has he got the legs to cover for two lads sitting in front of him as opposed to having someone beside him giving him a hand? So I asked a few lads during the week exactly about this to try and kind of explain to me a bit more how it's going to work with Mount, because I can't really visualize how it works that well. It's all coming back to these inverted fullbacks coming in and covering the spaces in midfield, and that to be honest, it's not a style I like. I haven't liked it so far this season. Not sure if it's going to work going forward, but Amrabat coming in does, as you said, throw a spanner in the works. Like, he can sit next to Casemiro and allow Bruno do his thing. Pushing Bruno outright doesn't work for me at all. Don't like it whatsoever. The only reason I think he can push it outright is because potentially Anthony and even maybe Jadon Sancho aren't doing the bits on the right hand side, so he can probably identify that area as an area he could push Bruno out wide and let him out there. But I don't think he ever does much out there. He's better off if he kind of floats around in the middle and just does his own little thing, just popping balls around the place. So yeah, Mount's a curious one for me. I'm looking forward to seeing what Ten Hag's got up his sleeve on this one, but I'm not sure it quite works. I'm not sure why we signed him, if I'm brutally honest, because I don't think we needed him. I thought we had areas we could have focused those funds on a bit better, but he's here now. He's one of us, so we'll back him and give him our support. But it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, definitely. It's one where I really like the player. I thought, especially in the season Chelsea won the Champions League, he was very influential, kind of in the midfield and on the right as well, like Mason Mount was. So it'll be interesting to see kind of if Mount can adapt, because he had a very difficult year last year at Chelsea. Now I know you can probably attribute that to the whole club was a mess last year, in general. But it's interesting. But I think being out for 6 weeks is quite a setback. Especially there's plenty of football to be played. If Amrabat comes in and settles, Mason Mount kind of fighting Bruno then essentially for his place. I'm going to come to Jay in this. I'm going to come to Tyreek to kind of get an outsider point of view on this. Do you maybe look at other like little ways we can kind of work around this? Because Brian mentioned something there, like that the fact that out wide in certain games, our right wingers haven't done the business, and even to an extent maybe sometimes out on the left. Could Manchester United play a midfield diamond and play Højlund and Rashford as a two up top? And then could you play Mount, Bruno, Amrabat and Casemiro in the same midfield?
Yeah, for sure. That's what the signing of Mason Mount gives you. He gives you that versatility. He can play as more as an 8, an attacking 8, or even behind as a 10. And you've even seen play for Chelsea out wide at points when they convert to a back 3. So that's where the signing makes sense. And it's kind of hard to really judge Mason Mount when Ten Hag is trying out a new system. It's kind of how I link it with Kai Havertz. When they're playing in a new role, in a new team, and the whole team is playing in a different sort of system. You've seen in the Wolves game in particular, Luke Shaw, when he was when he was playing, he was inverting, which we didn't really see him do a lot last year for United. And you're seeing the wingers, they're getting a lot of the ball, so that's quite good from an attacking point of view, but they're not being quite decisive with it. I remember in that Spurs game in particular in the first half, Garnacho, Anthony having the ball a lot out wide and not executing with the final pass or the shot in the end. So the threat is there, but I do think you need to give it time. Looking from an outside perspective, because the impact he made in that Spurs game, I thought when you were pressing them in that first half, he was turning over the ball quite a lot high up the pitch, and Mason Mount was a key part of that. And now bringing in Amrabat, it gives you that, once again, versatility when you are going away from home against the big 6 clubs in particular. I know he won't be available for this game this weekend, for one, probably because he can't be registered, and 2, he hasn't trained at all in pre-season. That's what you let me know backstage, Keane. But in those away games where you have struggled with Erik Ten Hag, you can kind of mix and match a little bit, and Mason Mount can come in and you can start. You can even start him ahead of Anthony in some games if you need him to. So, yeah, I think it's just giving him time, being patient, and yeah, he'll find his role, and the other players will also understand what they want from Ten Hag as well this season.
Yeah, definitely 100%. Look, I think with him and Bruno, both of them are versatile, that they can play in different positions. So ideally for me, I want to see a way where how Ten Hag can make this work. So I know, like with Ajax, he was a very good coach, and he was very flexible with his systems at Ajax, where sometimes he altered from a back 3 to a back 4. Sometimes he went 4-4-2. Sometimes he went to 4-3-3. So I know Brian put out a tweet the other day about the 4-4-2. The 4-4-2 and everything else is nonsense. But yeah, but like, look, I trust Erik Ten Hag, I think, to find a solution. I think, look, he has enough credit in the bank. I think last season, like Tyreek, you were mentioning backstage about the fact that the first 2 games he tried to play open football, and then he went a bit more pragmatic against Liverpool, and we've seen more results. And like, look, I think he's a smart enough manager. Like, there has to be some thought process behind the Mount signing, behind the Amrabat signing, and kind of how things will work. So look, it'd be interesting to see what happens. But I want to come back to you, Tyreek, on Arsenal, because obviously you signed Kai Havertz. And last season you had a very formidable kind of midfield of Partey, Odegaard, and Xhaka. Obviously, Xhaka's gone. And now you brought Havertz in. It's a different kind of way of playing. And I've seen a lot of criticism and mixed views on the Arsenal side on your own midfield, because similar to what's happened with us at Mount. Talk to me what's happened with Kai Havertz signing in the midfield and how that's working out really from your perspective.
Yeah, so it was a signing that not a lot of fans thought was going to happen going into the window. It was more of an opportunity, similar to Mason Mount in a way. There was an opportunity there, given his contract and Chelsea needing to make sales to get their players in. And it's a player that Arteta really wants and who suits how he wants to build this midfield going forwards. So we had Xhaka in that role last year, who exceeded beyond all of our expectations with an attacking point of view, going backwards and forwards, being a proper box-to-box midfielder. And with Kai Havertz, a lot of the worry going into this season was, is he going to give us that defensive stability that Xhaka has been able to give us? And that's actually been his strongest point in the early days. His off-the-ball work in terms of his counter-pressing and getting back into the shape. He's been covering more distance than any other player for Arsenal and any other player in the pitch in the games that he's played. But the problem is that cohesion. We're losing that relationship that Xhaka, Zinchenko, Martinelli had on that left. You saw it with the clips that were going viral on Twitter and all other places with, trying to play that 1-2 with Martinelli didn't go right, and when he could have turned and he gave it straight away to Fulham, and then there's a lot of moans and groans. So it's not just him, but when you're seeing Partey inverting from the right as well, playing in a right back role, which I hope he doesn't play in this game, we're still learning these different relationships and partnerships in and around the pitch. So yeah, it's been a difficult start in terms of how Arsenal performed. We've not come out flying out the gates like we did last year, but I do think long term it will be positive, and it's just got to look at the champions of the league. I know none of us like them, and especially you guys, the noisy neighbours in City. But he started really slow. I thought last year they looked vulnerable. Even when they beat you, they still shipped 3 goals, and they weren't defensively as solid as they were before. And losing to Brentford and Tottenham, and when you beat them at Old Trafford, they weren't at their brilliant sharp best. But they found their balance within that team and built those relationships to have a strong end. And that's what I want for Arsenal. Havertz will give us more of a goal threat going forward. I hope that we can find him with those back post crosses. He's been making some good runs into the box, but hasn't quite yet been found. So I think the players are still learning a lot with him in particular.
It's very similar to kind of what's happened to us at Mount at the minute, because we're trying to find, I suppose, new patterns of play. I think even I suppose ideally Arteta probably wants Arsenal to kind of play in a similar way to what he was coaching up at City when he was assistant coach up there as well. So yeah, it's very interesting to see how the Havertz signing works out, because if you actually look at it, like Mount I think Mount, if you look at the way the box-to-box role and obviously defensive work rate and also going forward, you'd probably say Mount was a good fit for the Arsenal team. Probably more so than United, and probably Havertz would probably be better off, in my opinion, probably playing as a striker rather than maybe the midfield role, because he done especially his first season at Chelsea, he played decent there. But look, it's like the Mount sign. I think you just have to give it time. I think that's what you probably have to do with it. And I think Arteta, similar to Ten Hag, is very principled about the way he likes to do things in terms of he has his way of playing, and if you don't like it, you fuck off. Like, I think he has that kind of similar approach to kind of what Ten Hag has. So it'd be interesting to see kind of, does he stick with it? Does, like you said, I know we're going to talk about kind of the game in a few minutes in terms of where we expect players might play and stuff, but I hope Partey does start right back on Sunday, because I'd love to see Rashford get a run at him. I think that if there's a way United win that game, is Partey playing on that right back position. But look, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I want to get the Jay's perspective first of all on Arsenal. Not so much in terms of Havertz, but in general, Arteta's kind of obviously he's had a couple of years now, in terms of rebuilding Arsenal, getting his own players in. They obviously won the FA Cup a few years ago now. They challenged for the league last year. Is there an expectation, do you think, on Arteta this season now to win a trophy and do well in the Champions League, considering similar to what United have done, but obviously Arteta's had a bit longer than Ten Hag. Do you think now there's an expectation he needs to go one further this season, considering the outlay and kind of how good they challenged last season?
Yeah, definitely. I think you got to kick on, improve. We had Kevin Campbell on the channel the day before yesterday. He's a big Arsenal fan, obviously an ex-Arsenal player, did very well there. And he was saying it. He was saying, look, you finished second, win silverware. He thought United had a better season than Arsenal last season. That was his opinion, and I agree with it. Because he said United won something and got Champions League football. He said, you want to win things. it's good finishing second. You know, we finished second under Ollie. Would I call that a great season? I probably wouldn't, because you want to win something, and I think, you know, losing that Europa League final still sort of stays with me. So for what Arteta's done in the league last season, where for 3/4, if not 4/5 or whatever of the league, Arsenal were fantastic. They just sort of fell by the wayside in that last little sort of chunk of games. And the players he's brought in, the money he's spent, the youngsters that have come through and done well as well. I think that is the natural progression, is to win something. The difficulty is in the league, you've got this City team, which pains me to say it, just, you know, don't look like they've gotten any worse than they were last season. I think they just look as strong as they were last season. Was hoping that maybe they'd lose one or two players, or, you know, time would catch up with one or two players. I know it's only early days, but they've spent well. They've done what we used to do when you've got a strong squad. You just add to a couple of players who fit in straight away, and it's happy days. So winning the league's going to be very difficult. Winning the Champions League, I don't see that happening for Arsenal, but it could do. Stranger things have happened. But I think if you do well in the Champions League, I think that's the only way, me personally, I think you can get away with not winning silverware. Because if you remember, go back to Klopp in a few years ago at Liverpool, when he got to that Champions League final, he was under pressure that he'd been at Liverpool, they'd lost the Europa League final, lost the League Cup final, they'd been a bit wavy in the league. But once he got to the Champions League final, everyone was like, even though he lost it, he went, look what this guy's doing. We believe in him. And I think Arteta would have, if he did something like that, got to the, you know, the final, the semis even, people could go, okay, that's progress. In the Champions League, getting to the last stages, we can still believe in this guy. However, I think if you don't win anything and you don't do well in Europe, then question marks have got to be asked. And listen, you know, Arsenal fans are similar to United fans a lot of ways. You can be quite demanding of managers when things don't go well. You know, we've seen it where managers are doing all right and we'll back him, and then it's like any football club, really. Even Wenger, who's, you know, so successful, there'll come a time when Arsenal fans have had enough of him. So for me, this is a bit of a pivotal season for Mikel Arteta, but I think they've got some decent players. They've got some good young players, and the likes of Saka, for example, I just think he's a fantastic player. I don't, you know, if he carries on the way he's going, then there's every chance that Arsenal can end up with some silverware. And it'd be funny if they won the Carabao Cup, because I think the opinions would change about it. Or the drink cup and all that I was hearing a few months ago from the Gooners. I think they'd all be liking that one if it was going to the Emirates. So yeah, I think it's this path. Of course, in football, like we've seen over the years with United managers, you know, with Jose, with Ole, once you start doing well, people expect you to sustain that or to build on it. And if you don't, you're gone.
Yeah, Brian, do you, just on that, he obviously, Jay made an analogy of obviously their expectation. You're doing well, you need to kind of do more. Do you think obviously the fact he's brought through kind of the young players, so like obviously the Bukayo Saka's the world in there, do you think the fact that he's developed players that maybe the Arsenal board might give him a bit more time, even let's say if they, like let's say with Ollie, like he kind of kept United in the top four for them couple of years, and then we want him to go on and win the league. Do you think Arsenal might need that next, I suppose, another season staying in the top four, considering it was like 6 years without Champions League before that? Do you think they kind of need to kind of sustain themselves a top 4 team, then maybe go for the title next year?
Yeah, I can't see the board being too upset with a bit of stability coming back into Arsenal again. And, you know, they spent many a season with Wenger in Champions League. They dropped out of it. I know Arteta I think he's exceeded expectations with Arsenal at the moment, because a couple of years back, the Arsenal boys wanted him out as soon as possible. And there was no trust in the process, but then the process clicked and now they're all happy again. So he's doing very well. Yeah, bit of stability back around Arsenal, keep them contention up around the top 2 in the league. Like Jay said, if they can get a deep run in the Champions League, it'll do him very well. They probably do need to win a cup just to give him a little bit of extra backing, but I don't see him asking for his head if they don't win anything this season and they've got a half decent season in Champions League. I don't see they're going to ask for his head. It's back. It's keeping him relevant again. It's back stable again. It's another season of being involved, which is important. Like, that's even for us at the moment. That's what we want. We want to be involved. We want to get back up to the top and be realistically in contention for the title. I mean, it's all well and good being in a title challenge up to Christmas, but when you're absolutely fading away come March, it's a bit of a damp squid, isn't it? So yeah, I think he's doing a good job there. I think he'll continue to do quite a good job there if he can keep that team playing the way it's playing. And I think he's got time on his side for now. But I don't disagree. Questions will be asked, but I don't think they'll be asked so severely that his job will be in contention.
Yeah, I think the only way the questions would be asked if he had like a Though, like when Thomas Tuchel last season kind of had that bit of blow up in them first 8 games, and then obviously Todd Bowley, we all know, I suppose there was a bit of instability there at the club. Well, if you had a similar kind of run that Tuchel and Potter kind of had in terms of losing games, then that's the only way I'd see Arteta getting sacked. Like for me, the fact he's developed the young players, yes, he spent money, but like in this day and age, we all 4 of us want to be honest here. You need to spend money to compete now. Like when you look at the amount of teams that are up there, you've City, Liverpool are spending big despite, I think that Coutinho money must be running out soon at some stage. Man City are spending, Newcastle, as much as their fans want to create rivalries with everyone, they're spending as well. So, like, look, and I think at the end of the day, you have to give it time. The fact that he finished second with that squad last season, considering, the fact that City were up there and thereabouts, I think the thing that cost Arsenal last season was probably inexperience. City are a well-oiled machine. If you look, well, no pun intended there. But in terms of how they kind of run their club, in terms of the squad they have, they knew they'd go then. They've pushed Liverpool so many times in the last few seasons, and I think Arsenal just got them at the end of last season. That bit of lack of experience right at the title challenging level. I think that's what cost them.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where I'd just like to add in terms of, a lot of our fans banter each other. Arsenal, Man United are talking about how much money that's been spent. Erik ten Hag got to do something this year, Arteta, vice versa. But as you said, every other team's spending money. If Chelsea are talking about that, they need to have time to adapt and gel together. And they've spent nearly $1 billion in 12 months. So that people forget about that. And even our own fans at times, because we think we've brought in these players, it's the manager's signings, but they should just hit the ground running because this is the players that he wants. No, they have to adapt. Even someone like a Højlund coming in, for example, he's not even had a pre-season with the club yet. He's looking at the personal lives, trying to find a house in Manchester, settle down, all those things that are in a part of it, as well as learning a new system and adapting to a new league. We forget about some of these things a lot of the time. And I think with Erik ten Hag, just on Man United, like I felt like Arteta had this himself in his first half a season that when he took over. When we won the FA Cup, we over-exceeded our expectations. And then the very next season, we were like, okay, you know what? We can compete for the top 4. We ultimately didn't. We finished 8th in that year. And it kind of gave us a reality check. And with Man United, you did an amazing job given the expectations, and especially after a slow start last year, to win the Carabao Cup, finish in 3rd, and beat in and around the likes of Arsenal, Man City. Even if it was in January, that's a very good job for Erik ten Hag. And for me, it might even be a 1 step back to take 2 steps forwards again next year. And the main thing is what you guys need to see is an identity, a style of play that's going to get molded and get these players settled in, even if it means that you finish 4th or, you just remain in the Champions League and you don't necessarily win a trophy. I think that will be a good season if you can have a style of play adjusted and really implemented to build from, and then next year really compete for the title. I think, but yeah, who knows? The league's crazy. If Man City blow up, which we kind of all hope that they do that in that team, and they lose that hunger, and players go down injured or whatnot, just from the amount of games that they played, then yeah, the opportunity could be there, and you can't turn it down then.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's one of them where we're all kind of sitting here hoping City fall. We're hoping that maybe they all get complacent. But look, let's be honest. With the depth they have in the squad, I think that's very unlikely at the minute. But we will. You mentioned Rasmus Højlund, Tyreek, and I'm going to bring this to Jay. Obviously, you look at the amount of chances Bruno Fernandes is creating. It's ridiculous. He's like when you look at his chance creation and his forward passes and all that type of stuff. When you look at the player profile of Rasmus Højlund, how excited are you to find Bruno finally to have a vocal point up there? And maybe, we start, even though we're shipping goals, we could potentially finally start scoring them.
I am excited, but I think we've got to be a little bit patient with Rasmus Højlund. I get what you're saying. Bruno Fernandes creates a ridiculous amount of chances, and a lot of those chances go begging because we do lack an out-and-out striker. We've got Anthony Martial, who's obviously constantly injured. For me, Marcus Rashford's better on the left-hand side. So, and then last season we had Wout Weghorst, who literally didn't score a Premier League goal, which tells its own story. So to have a striker, an out-and-out striker is great, but he's a kid. He's 20 years old. He scored 27 goals in professional football. So we can't expect him to come into United. He scored 9 in Serie A last season, which is, was decent. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm a little bit worried because I think it's almost like it's the worst case scenario for him to come into this club in terms of expectation, because we're desperate for a striker. He's not, as Terrak just said, he's not had a pre-season. He's still relatively unproven at the top level. I think he's a good player and I think he will succeed, but it might take him a little while to get going and get used to the Premier League. He's never played in the Premier League before. He's going to get comparisons with Erling Haaland. He just will, because
Sky Sports have already done it.
Exactly. He's Scandinavian, he's blonde, he's tall, his name's a little bit like Haaland. They'll start comparing. They've already got the graphs ready to go when it's going to be like, let's just compare him to a lad who's just had the most successful season in terms of goals in Premier League history. So he's got a weight on his shoulders, even going to the point where, if you look at last season, where the tables finished, the 2 toughest grounds to go to are either the Emirates or the Etihad. And he's about to probably make his debut at the Emirates. And we haven't beaten a top 8 team away from home for a year. So there's a lot on this kid. And I think, I can only speak for myself. As a United fan, I've just got to temper my expectations, because it might take him a season to get going. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he smashes it straight away. But if at the end of the season, we could be in a scenario where he's got, say, 15 goals in all competitions, that's not terrible. But I think there's this thing now where it's like, we need him to bang in 30, and Bruno's going to put it on a plate for him, and he should do, which I'm not disagreeing with that. And I also think we have to look at our wide men as well, because
Rashford and that have to chip in as well.
Yeah, because Anthony and Rashford and players like that, they don't tend to be creators. I know their assist for Rashford's quite decent, but a lot of the time he's looking to get his shot off, and he constantly looks to get his shot off. So they may need to adapt as well, so they can work together with this lad, because, like I said, I do worry a little bit. I just feel like it's like, oh my God, Højlund's our saviour almost. And listen, he's a good young player, but he needs a little bit of time. And in an ideal world, if we were really serious and we had the money, we'd have gone out and got a Harry Kane or someone and a Højlund. But that's, I'm living in a fantasy world there. That was never likely to happen, especially
we were all hoping the takeover was going to be done and we get the 2 of them. That's what we were all hoping before the start of the summer. But the Glazers are still here, unfortunately, so we can't live in, I suppose, as Jay said, the ideal world with that. But Brian, I'm going to come to you on this signing, because obviously Jay put it perfectly there in terms of, you're coming to Manchester United, you have the weight of the world on the shoulders. I know Gary Neville talks about the Manchester United goalkeeper being the hardest position in world football. I'd even say equally being striker at Manchester United, considering the plethora of brilliant strikers, like the man behind you, Scandinavian as well, being at the club. Like, do you think he has the right manager and I suppose the right environment to thrive? And obviously we know the match-going fan base will support him, but do you think, this is the time we have to curtail these expectations and maybe, obviously just back him?
Yeah, like I've said it before on Twitter, this kid must have a massive pair of balls in him to come into this club at 20 years of age, at this stage of his career, with a fan base that can be as toxic as any on the planet, with owners that aren't exactly ideal for his development either, or his future, a manager who's going to be under pressure if he doesn't perform, players that get questioned left, right and centre. The media are going to be down on top of him within seconds. Like Jay said, there's graphs ready. They're praying he fails. Everyone's praying he fails. He must have a massive pair of balls, because he must have really massive confidence in himself to come into this club. It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest clubs in the world. You're going to be coming at 20 years of age as the number 1 striker. Your backup is a sick note. I mean, it's all on him. I mean, it come to the stage yesterday and today, even though it's a terrible situation to be in, I would have taken a last-minute aging striker, like a Cavani-esque, Zlatan kind of signing, just someone to come in and take a bit of pressure off him. If he has to step out for a couple of games, someone that can come in and play a few games, take the focal point off of him now and again, give him a break. He's going to need it, and Jay's right. He needs time. Might need a full season. Who knows how long it takes this kid to get going? Or he might get going straight away and be an absolute phenomenon, which would be amazing. But I'm not expecting that. I'm hoping that the fans can give him some bit of slack. I'm hoping they don't get on top of him straight away. If he hasn't scored after 2 or 3 games and they all start giving him shit, it's a massive, massive job he's taken on at a very young age. He's got more balls than I have, because I wouldn't like to take it on, to be honest with you. But I've high hopes for him. From what I've seen of him, he looks like a good rounded striker. He looks like a good strong lad. has kind of all the aspects to his game that you want. Good to link up, good powerful lad.
Dresses very well as well.
Dresses very well, which is important. Yeah, always important. The problem, and I think Jay hinted at it there. One of the problems we might find is our supply coming from the wings. I mean, it's not like the days of Giggsy and Becks where they're firing crosses in left, right, and centre. These lads are cutting in. Most of the time, they're cutting in to get on their shooting foot and try to let off a shot. So, like, Bruno's going to be pivotal to this lad getting these goals, those little sliding balls through in the middle and popping balls past defenders for him. It's interesting. Do you know what? It's an intriguing time to be a United fan because things are changing, the style of play is changing, the players coming in through the door, the faces are changing and wearing the shirt. It's an intriguing, nervous, exciting time, and I'm looking forward to see what comes.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, so looking at the clips, I'm not going to turn around here and be like Reese and say I watch every single fucking league in the world. I'm a religious Serie A fan. But from like compilations and stuff I've watched of him, he looks like a good presser. He makes them runs that natural number 9 makes. You know them type of runs that only a striker can make. And we've kind of lost that playing Rashford up front, playing Martial up front. Whereas like if, for example, you mentioned like the fact that you have Anthony and you have Rashford, both kind of players who like to attack the defender and then take a shot. For me, I think this could be a signing that could actually, I know Brian's going to slaughter me for this, right? But could actually get the most out of Jadon Sancho. Because when his best football at Dortmund was when he was linking up with a focal point in Erling Haaland. I know I'm not comparing Haaland and Højlund now before people jump in and say I'm clickbaiting now and comparing the two of them. But the fact that you have a number 9 up there, maybe Jadon can get use his skill set maybe more than what Anthony could, and Jadon can link up with Højlund. Who knows? I think that's something maybe Ten Hag could look at, playing Sancho on the right. And then leave Rashford do what he needs to do in terms of shooting and stuff like that. But look, Erik Ten Hag, I think, is a tactically astute manager, and he I don't think he'd be going into this with a scattergun approach. I don't think so. Looking at his track record, look what he done last season. Bar playing Wout Weghorst as a number 10. I think he has enough credit in the bank that we can we can trust him with this one. But Terry, I want to get your opinion on this signing, because obviously Arteta signed young players as well in kind of a similar vein. Obviously, he brought Gabriel Jesus, which is kind of a different profile to what Højlund is. What do you think from the outside point of view of this signing?
Yeah, I was talking to my United friends as well about this, because there's going to be a lot of pressure, as you said, on how many goals the GA, which is what most players are judged from nowadays. But from what I've seen for United over the past few years with the striker, there's 3 areas in particular that I think you've kind of lacked. One is availability. So as long as he's available and he's there to play, so if you can get to the levels of Bruno, then that's crazy because the amount of games that he plays. But being available, having a threat in the final third, and most importantly, having that capability to play with his back to goal and link up play. I think those 3 areas are more important than the goals this season, because you get goals coming from Bruno, even more if you've got a striker that can bring those aspects to his game. Rashford will score plenty of goals. Most likely he'll be your top goal scorer. Mason Mount will chip in with a fair few. You've got Casemiro from set pieces and whatnot. So those are the areas that will really improve Man United and make you a better all-round team, rather than him getting, it's unrealistic to expect him to get 30 to 20 plus goals even, given the age that he's at. When I've seen him, because, doing my little YouTube scouting and stuff myself, there's still areas in his game that he still needs to develop. And to be a mature striker, hey, look at the number 9, our number 14, who just got called up for England. It's taken him about 6 years since he made his debut to get to this sort of level where he's getting recognised at international level. So giving him time, it will be most important. Although the fans, there will be sections, because just the size of the club that you are, will be looking at, right, you're not producing at the end, scoring enough goals for us. He's not going to be good enough, writing them off, etc. But just look at the final thing. I'd say Erik Ten Hag played Wout Weghorst a lot because of the other aspects that he brought to the team, and allowed Rashford to make runs in behind, come in and off the left and offer some support in there. I think that he will offer more of a threat than Wout Weghorst, sorry. So, yeah, just as long as he can do that, that'll be the most important thing for you guys this season.
Yeah, it is. And look, I think just like you said, I think one of the best abilities a footballer can have is availability, especially in this in this climate. Like, look, like you said, if he could play as many games, Bruno Fernandes, we're laughing. But like, look, I think we have to obviously curtail our expectations and just give him time. Look, ideally for me, when I was looking at strikers, like what Brian said, Keane and Højlund. My original choice to start the summer was Keane and Evan Ferguson. They were my two. But I said, look, to come in, I think looking at Ferguson's profile, it's kind of similar to kind of the game of Harry Kane, and that they were kind of two I was looking at. But look, from speaking to a lot of people who understand football, who watch a lot of football, they say Højlund is good. And look, let's just see what happens. And I'd just like to say to Tyreek, just a little analogy. Last time United had an injury crisis, going into an Arsenal game, and Arsenal were title challengers, Marcus Rashford made his debut and scored 2. So maybe Rasmus Højlund can go on and do the same Sunday. Hopefully that's a good omen. Hopefully that's a good omen for us on Sunday. But one last thing I kind of want to chat about, guys. Obviously, look, we've had great United and Arsenal teams. In the past, we've had epic games between each other. I'm going to come to you first, Jay. What was your favourite United and Arsenal game growing up as a Man United fan?
It's a great question. There's been some great ones, aren't there? And you look at the Champions League ones and some of the ones we had in the league as well. Do you know what? Funnily enough, one of my favourites is a bit random, but it was the 4-0 in the FA Cup. Because I remember that game where Fergie had tweaked it a little bit. I think he'd taken out Hargreaves. He'd brought in a few of the players that weren't always guaranteed to start, the likes of Nani and Anderson and players like that. And I remember looking at Arsenal were flying in the league at the time. I know this was the cup. And I remember thinking, this could be a tricky one, this. And we just played them off the park. And I was used to Arsenal United games being very close, back and forth, one goal the other end, a real battle. And it was one of the few games I remember in that time. There was one or two others, but one of the ones that sticks out where we were just dead comfortable. And you remember Nani showboating, running down the wing, heading it, and Anderson doing no-look passes and all this sort of get-up. It was just like a bit of a party atmosphere. And yeah, it just always stays in my memory, that, because there was some great skills on show. And it felt almost like a friendly towards the end. We were just like messing about. So yeah, there's been more important games than that. And certainly there's been more sort of exciting ones. But just as a spectacle, it was one that I look back on with fond memories.
Yeah, that one was good. Nani was just taking the piss that day, weren't he? Like, he was just fucking ridiculous.
Was that when Raphael and Fabio played in the midfield? Was it that game?
No, that was. I think that was a different one. I remember
That's
that one
2
you
years
were on about.
later,
Yeah, that was a 2-0, wasn't it? Yeah. Because I remember looking at that team going, Fergie's lost the plots here. What is this? Why is he done? Man. People were getting out with conspiracy theories, going like, he's trying to do his mate Wenger a favour because them two are mates now. And all this nonsense, just like, Fergie never want to do that. And then it works out well.
Oh man,
Brian, what's your favorite United and Arsenal game? Growing up, going to all the matches.
It is a great question, and like Jay said, there's been some absolute belters. I always just look back fondly on that wonder goal in the cup with Giggsy. It's an obvious choice, but it's a game where I watched it. I was at home in my mum and dad's house as a kid watching it on telly, and I'll never forget just my jaw hitting the floor, going, "What has he just done? That's outrageous." And it took a few minutes to sink in, but it was a cracking game. It had everything, and we don't get games like that anymore, do we?
No, it's not like we don't get that. I think the rivalries kind of it's simmered down, hasn't it? Like in recent years, I think looking at kind of both clubs and kind of where we've gone. Obviously, teams like Chelsea and City have come into the league, and football's kind of changed. But look, I think when you look at traditional rivalries in the Premier League, Manchester United versus Arsenal, for me, when you look at the prime Barclays Premier League, it's probably the best rivalry. So for Fergie and Wenger going at it for years. Arsenal's 98 team, United's treble winners, the Invincibles. There's so many good United and Arsenal battles down the years, especially the Fergie and Wenger era, especially. So it's kind of watered down, but look, fans will know, it is a rivalry of rich history. Tyreek, what's your favourite game? United and Arsenal down the years.
Some honourable mentions. I wasn't here for this one, but the Will Todd goal, to win the league at Old Trafford is something special, and the fans still
that leapfrogging. I still have memories of them leapfrogging, man, on the pitch.
Yeah, That's amazing. We're still singing that song today. I'm sure you hear it on the weekend as well. But the other one, last season's up there as an honourable mention. Last minute winner, Eddie Nketiah, someone who came in for Jesus. That was his big moment. But for me, the Arsenal 3-0. And because that felt like we could have got the revenge for the 8-2 when Alexis Sanchez scored with that flick at the near post and then a banger from David De Gea. I felt like that could have been the game to get the revenge for the 8-2 in that season. But we slowed down, I remember, after we scored the third. And I was gutted, even though we still won the game. But yeah, that was the best performance that I've seen us have against United in that period.
That had repercussions. I'm pretty sure we bought Alexis Sanchez off the back of that. So you had a double victory there, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think we were like, was it Darmian he destroyed?
Yes.
Yeah, Darmian never came right back again after that.
No, he didn't.
Yeah,
it was that one. Ozil was on fire then too. It was always when it was at the Emirates. Never at Old Trafford when we needed him.
And King's Football Show says in the comments their favourite one as well. You mentioned the Wiltord one. They said the one at Old Trafford, the Wiltord. Do you know what? My favourite ones when we ended the unbeaten run in 2004. Because I have a few friends who are Arsenal fans, and I still say to this day that Wayne Rooney's one was a stonewall penalty, and I'll stick to that fact all day long. And the fact Rude,
if VAR was a thing, then we'd have finished the game with 6 men.
Yeah, exactly.
I've never seen a team get away with so many bad fouls as we did. I was loving it, but we kicked them all over the gaff.
I think that's where it started. Do you know that soft underbelly that Arsenal had for the years after? That's where it started from. You guys did that.
Do you know what? It's to do with that game as well. What was so symbolic about it was when Rude, remember he missed a penalty the season before, and all the Arsenal players, they were crowded around him, and then Rude, burying that, and his celebration, the relief. Like for me, I think that's my favorite game. Obviously, I could mention 8-2, obviously that stands out. But look, I think in the grand scheme of things, I think ending that unbeaten run kind of maybe started that kind of, like you said, that decline of Arsenal kind of around then. Wenger, Chelsea came in around then as well. Julio says here, Rashford's debut, have they got enough for the league? We daily blind and Michael Carrick playing centre half that day. Yeah, you mentioned as well, Tyreek, Varela was playing right back as well. That's Rashford's debut. That was a great one. But yeah, look, they're all great shouts, and lads, I'm sure people in the comments probably afterwards will throw their ones in as well. But finally, before we go, lads, quick round question to everybody. Score prediction for Sunday. I'm going to come to the opposition first. Tyreek, how do you think it's going on Sunday?
You know what? I think we've been nice to each other for the 42 minutes here, but this is probably where you'll all go off me. Yeah, I expect a very strong performance from Arsenal to make a statement. I think this is important for Arsenal to make a statement in the league against a United side that are struggling with their injury woes and trying to find that balance in midfield, letting new players come in and adapt. I think with Arsenal, we'll go back to that back four that we used to, because Zinchenko's now returned. I think Gabriel will come back into the side, and then Rice and Partey will be in the middle with Ødegaard in there. And I think Arsenal will start strong. If we can grab an early goal and not concede an early goal, which has been our problem, I think we could take this by storm. So I've gone with a 4-1 win.
Oh, that will be pain. That will be pain.
I told you, man. I'm 8-2. I need to try and get rid of it somehow.
Yeah, you have to get them demons away. Exactly. With that one, Brian. If that's a score on Sunday, your flight home, man, will be fucking rough. But on that, give us your score prediction for Sunday.
I'm still in shock, thinking it could be a 4-1 hammering, and I'm going to have to walk out that ground fucking devastated. Thanks to I was asked this Monday. And Monday I said I'd take a draw, but I said as the week goes on, I get more into my deluded stage, and by the time kickoff comes, I'm going to do them 5 or 6-0. But trying to be pragmatic and realistic, I would go with a score draw. I think Ten Hag's going to set the team up not to get beat. I think he's knowledgeable enough and he's realistic enough to know that Arsenal are a side that are doing really well at the moment. We haven't started very well. We've had a couple of dodgy performances behind us. I'm going to make a bold prediction that Scott McTominay comes in beside Casemiro.
Oh, it's good.
I have that one.
Oh, I can imagine the Twitter meltdown on Sunday if that happens. I'm literally just... Oh.
If he gets the winner, I will be insufferable.
Oh, I'm telling you now, anyone who follows Brian on Twitter knows he's a Scott McTominay enthusiast.
1-1 draw for us. Rasmus Højlund comes off the bench and bangs one off his arse.
Jay, choose your score prediction. Can you do better than that?
I don't know about Rasmus Højlund's ass getting the equaliser or whatever it is. I'm with Brian. When I did my predicted 11, I had McTominay in there alongside Casemiro, so I won't be surprised if that happens. I think it's going to be close. But sooner or later, right, the law of averages, we've got to win away from home against a top 8 team. Like, it's, it can't go on forever. I say this every time we play a top 8 team, by the way. But I'll go for United win. I'll go for a 2-1. I think, if we get a 2-1, I think it's every United fan's duty on this. You talk about being insufferable, Brian. If we're not insufferable, I don't know what's going on. We have got to be insufferable because you guarantee Terrak and his boys will be mega insufferable if they get a result 100%. Against us. Brian is so as well, man. That's what it's about. So, yeah, I hope so because it worries me how I'm like you, Brian. I'm like, you know what, take a draw now. And that's a sad state of affairs, but that's where we're at, really, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
You already know, Jay, as well. Like, if it's an Arsenal win, the clips of you on doing your predictions will all keep coming back around.
Yeah. Rightly so, man. Rightly so.
On that, I'm going to go 2-1 as well. Look, like Jay said, I think we have to win a game. I think, let's say, I know Tyreek said that they'll go back to their old system, but Arteta, will he drop the big signing? I think that's the question. And I think if Thomas Partey plays right back and we play Rashford off the left, I think that's the way United win the game. We've seen what he done to Ben White last year, and he had to take Ben White off with Tommy Asu out there because Ben White was getting roasted. So, look, if we put Partey out there, or even if White starts out there, Rashford on his day, give the ball to him, so he can beat any fullback in world football. So I think he'd be key to victory on Sunday. So I'm going to go United win 2-1, and I'll go like Brian. I'll go Rasmus Højlund winner off the bench, and then Talk Sports, Sky Sports, and all them will have to find some way that the agenda on Monday they might talk about corruption in the Saudi league. They're buying everyone. That's what they'll probably do on Monday. If
Højlund scores, right, the media that hate us will come for him. They'll go, that's it now. If he doesn't get 20 goals this season, it'll be a flop. That's what it'll be. They'll put some mad figure on what he's got to get, and if he doesn't get it, then he's a failure. That's how them ones will go.
Like Anthony towards he scored in his debut against us, and then the expectations were through the roof, and he didn't quite reach it in his first season. He'll be like that.
No, he went 6 months. He went 6 months after that without a goal, didn't he? Not long after that.
You see, it's typical. Always us, man. Always us letting them on their debut.
On that, though, we will wrap it up. We got all the lads' score predictions. It's been a great podcast. Great to get the lads' views, and great to see Tyreek back on the channel as well. But just before we go, Jay, where can our viewers catch you, and what do you have coming up?
I'm on Stretford Paddock. We'll have a watch along for the game on Sunday, and we've had like I said earlier, we've had a little interview with Kevin Campbell looking ahead of the game as well. Also do Scotty and Motty. It's a podcast me and my boy Scotty do. We talk about things like, football, mental health, stuff like that. So if you follow me on Twitter, Jay Motty, you'll see all the stuff I do.
Yeah, perfect. Do follow Jay as well. They do good content over there as well. Good listen. So do check that out as well. And Brian, I understand you're jumping on a podcast literally right after this one. So what's coming up there?
Do a bit for Stretty News, straight on the Stretty podcast straight after this one. Catch me on Twitter at DayTrippingRed if you're sadistic enough to want to follow my content.
And Tyreek, where can everyone catch you?
Yep, you can find me at Terrak Talks. I am an Arsenal fan, but I do other Premier League content as well, just all football mainly. So yeah, I do talk about United a lot. Everyone does now, it's because they are a big topic of conversation as always. But yeah, Terrak Talks, guys. And yeah, thanks for having me on, and it's a pleasure to meet you all today.
Bit too level-headed for you for an Arsenal fan, Terrak. I'm not happy about this. We're going to win the treble. Ten Hag wants sacking already.
Yeah. I'm on the water. That's why. Maybe on Sunday I feel differently.
Okay.
On Sunday. And do catch us here on the Devil's Advocate podcast. Mark will have a review show out Sunday as well, and Jamie's show will be on next week as well. So do catch that as well. But until then, guys, thanks very much, lads, for coming on, and we'll see you next time.